Field goal attempt for the redshirt freshman, Kyle Conradi, with 9 seconds to go from the right hash. Snaps good, holds good, kick on the way by Conradi, end over end, and it is good! Kyle Conradi hit a 54-yard field goal, and Iowa State leads at 20-19! Oh!
At the end of the day, we all know it's a Cyclone state.
All right, welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For. It is a Cyclone state. Trying a few new things, a little bit more production. Hopefully that worked well. And if you see, if things are a little bit chaotic tonight or whatever, I'm trying some new things and new technologies. So we're going to see how it goes. And I'm not great at all that stuff, but we're going to try it and we're going to do the best we can. As you heard, Iowa State does win the CyHawk game 20-19 on not a last-second field goal, but definitely last few seconds. I think there was 6 seconds left when it was made. Just real quick, a little recap. If you care about this game, you've heard it recapped. It is Wednesday night. You probably, heard it to death. Hawkeye fans, Cyclone fans, everything. So we're not going to spend very much time recapping it. More talk about going forward, what that means for each team. So just a quick recap for me. Iowa State could not have started worse. It started exactly how Iowa wins football games. A stop. Iowa State stopped them. A punt inside the 1. 2 good plays out to about the 8 or 9 yard line. Gave themselves a chance at like 3rd and 2, and then a false start. And then another false start. And the crowd's in it. The punt is bobbled. We get it out. Very quickly, we throw an interception at the 18-yard line. The difference is there wasn't the critical error where it was a pick 6. It wasn't a fumble, and they held them to field goals and not touchdowns. And that's really what this game was about, was inside the 5-yard line 2 times in the first half, and then the 2-point conversion in the second half. Iowa State never let them get touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. And it was 1st and goal inside the 5 twice, and then obviously the 2-point conversion from the 3. And in every one of those, I believe Caleb Johnson, who had 187 yards and was about 235 pounds and always fell forward, always would get a couple yards, was not in the ball game. That's the travesty of it. And then Iowa State played well. You have to make those plays. And Iowa let Iowa State stay in the game, and then it came back to get them. That's the recap of the game. The very, very Cliff Notes, very fast version. But that was the game.
Yeah, essentially it was. If you look at a couple stats real quick, if you didn't watch the game, you see Iowa State was 2 for 14 on 3rd down. And then if I told you Iowa had 204 rushing yards, you would have thought, well, that's an Iowa win right there. And really what it comes down to me more than anything was Cade McNamara. I just don't think he's very good. He can't be 13 for 29 for 99 yards. Now a little bit of that is Iowa State, but he had a couple bad picks. The one there where I think it was the 3rd quarter where Iowa State had a bad punt. Iowa gets it back in Iowa State's territory, 1st and 10. Kind of a cool little play design, but Iowa State, to their credit, had it sniffed out. Defender was right there, and Cade throws it right to him for an easy interception. That's quarterbacking 101. You don't make that throw on 1st down in your opponent's territory. You dirt it at someone's feet, or you take a sack for a short loss, and then you still got 2nd and 3rd down to hopefully gain some yards, maybe get in field goal range. So to me, I hate to, put it on one player. It's not all on him, of course, but I thought Cade was pretty atrocious in this game with the way that we were running the ball. And then, of course, the 2-point conversion, when that took place, I really wasn't pounding my fist that we shouldn't go for it. I wasn't pounding my fist that we should go for it. It was just when it was going on, I thought, I don't know if this is the best idea. I understood it from the score perspective. And then when we missed it, kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder if that might come back to bite us. Again, at the moment, I didn't feel strongly either way, but I did kind of wonder Iowa electing to take a point off the board potentially might come back to get us, and it did. And then, of course, Iowa State on that final drive, like I text you, a lot of clutch plays, and a big time kick.
Yeah, the 2-point conversion by the book and the analytics, you go for 2. But I'm surprised that Kirk did it because of how close the game still was at that time. It wasn't, and if you kick every point matters. Now, I think if that situation happens and there was 4 minutes left in the game, and if you get the 2-point conversion, the game's over, essentially. I think you do it if that's what you need. But at that time, every point matters. Now, if they kick the extra point, it's a tie ball game. And then so it did come back to bite them, and thankfully they didn't make it as a Cyclone fan. But yeah, there was just several things that they did differently that were very questionable for Kirk Ferentz. And I don't know if that's a Tim Lester influence that wants to do these things a little bit different, or I don't know what it was, but Iowa State made adjustment. For the first time in a long time in this series, Kirk Ferentz was outcoached. He hasn't won all the games, but I do think he's always coached this game better than Cyclone coaches over his 25 years, or whatever it's been. I think about 25, 26 years. He has outcoached Cyclone coaches 80% of the time. But this situation, he got outcoached bad in the second half, I think, by the Cyclone coaches, both Matt Campbell, the offensive coordinator, and John Haycock, the defensive coordinator. If you watch what happened, Iowa State on defense, they had that stretch zone, whatever, outside C-tack, C-gap runs were big runs. But other than that, they were not really able to run the football. Except they'd get 2-3 yards, and they couldn't stop them. And I'm surprised they went away from that. When they put it in McNamara's hands, he cannot make a big throw. And I don't know if he's been taught so bad that Lester can't get it out of him, or he's just not good. I mean, I think I'm leaning towards he's just not very good. But he throws off his back foot all the time. All the time. And against Illinois State last week, it was okay. But throwing off that back foot into Luke Lachey, and it was an okay throw, but it gave just a little bit extra time for our DB to jump in front of it to make that interception.
You can't make that throw, and you're right. He does throw off his back foot a lot. One thing I was thinking about too toward the end of the game and after is, he was at Michigan under Harbaugh. Harbaugh probably milked every ounce of talent that he had, and still decided to move on from him. Well, when you come to Iowa, I mean, as much as I love Ferentz and the Iowa program, Harbaugh's on a different level of coaching. So it's no surprise that he's come back down to earth to probably do what he actually is. And last year, the coaching that he got, who knows if it ruined him, right? But I lean more toward, I think I've seen enough. I mean, at this point, you could put the Northwestern guy in. I'm sure Iowa might, maybe, or should look good versus Troy. That doesn't matter to me. I mean, we'll see when we get into Big Ten play. Like I said, after the first week, nothing really changed for me. It was still to be determined. And after watching it against Iowa State, I feel less confidence about our passing game. Like I said, the running game's there, which is nice, with Caleb Johnson at least. But the passing game leaves a lot to be desired for about the 6th straight year now.
Yeah, your stats were, impeccable. Iowa runs for 200 yards, had one back for 187, and they lose a football game? That's insane. That's Iowa drew. I mean, how this game was played is how Iowa wins games. Punting was good. Iowa State made a few mistakes. The thing that changed was, and the play of the game was probably that interception, but it was the timing of that. Iowa State missed a field goal to end the half that, maybe should have got 3 points out of. Then they got the ball to start the second half, trying to get that 2-for-1, 2 in a row. And then they went like 3 and out, or maybe 1 first down, and punted a bad punt. It was kind of a shank. And I mean, I understand what Lester was doing. He was trying to go for the kill. I mean, if Iowa State Iowa scores on that drive, the game is over. Whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, and especially if it's a touchdown, that game is over. And we're at 12 minutes left to go in the third quarter. And it came back to get him, got the pick, and then Iowa State went down and scored. And a couple things. Iowa State made the plays. That first touchdown to Higgins, he intercepted the interception. That was crazy how good that catch was. It was right in the D-back's hands, and he stole it from him. And then that last drive, that out and up on Castro, great throw, great catch. But Phil Parker is the best in the country, one of the best in the country. But you cannot play man-to-man and let them get outside in that situation. I think that was a bad call.
Castro's one of my favorite defensive backs ever to play at Iowa. I think he's one of the best ever to do it. He got beat on that play. And, usually Iowa defense holds up in those situations, but Iowa State's got really good receivers, and they were able to make the plays. Like I said, that last drive, it was just clutch play after another by Iowa State. So you got to tip your cap to them. I mean, that's do or die situation there, and Iowa State made every play that they had to.
And then the kick was just absolutely nutted. It was a straight up golf shot where you flushed it and you hit it 2 feet to the pin and it spun and stopped right by the hole. I mean, that would have been good 60 plus. Yeah, that was and what do you think about this? I've heard some people, and I don't know if I disagree with it. Would Iowa have been a better chance to try to kick a 67-yard field goal there? Because obviously McNamara can't throw it that far. I guess I haven't looked at it, but I heard today on one of my shows I listened to that the ball actually only went 35 yards from the line of scrimmage. Now, he threw it like 50 because he was behind the line of scrimmage, but from the line of scrimmage to where the ball was thrown was only 35 yards downfield. So they had no chance to get it to the end zone, and they knew that. These kickers can kick it. Now, a 67-yard field goal, is it probably going to get blocked because you don't get the height? Then you have to hold it. You have to block for an extra second so he can get that height. Probably not happening anyway. And then he obviously has to make it from 67. But I think if the roles were reversed and seeing what the Iowa State kicker just did, I think you give him a shot. That would have been Iowa State's would have been close from 67.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how far your kicker can really kick it. I mean, if he struggles to even kick 60, then what are you doing? I think more than anything, Cade doesn't really have a super strong arm, at least in that situation. What I would rather see, rather than a Hail Mary or a kick, is throw a 15-yard pass and start lateraling around. That would be my goal, actually. I do some hook and ladder type stuff. Yeah, hope for that, because if Cade can't get to the end zone and you don't have a kicker that really can get plus 60 on a kick, I'd throw a 10, 15-yard pass and start pitching it around.
Yeah, I was just surprised at how not close to the end zone it was. All right, that's probably enough recap just because it is Wednesday and everybody's done it that follows this. Let's go forward. Iowa State is moved into the rankings. They're ranked 21st. Several websites, several people are now talking that, they put Iowa State in the playoff, in their projections. Essentially, it's like Lenardi's bracketology. They're doing that now for football. They're getting, are they going to win the Big 12? Is the Big 12 going to get an at-large bid? Everything's game for Iowa State. I mean, especially winning at Iowa. As long as there's not an upset from now on, Iowa State's probably kind of like, we talked about Iowa's going to be favored in every game but one on the year, and that probably still hasn't changed. Iowa State now goes to favored in, if you look out ahead, they're probably favored in every game now until Utah. Because West Virginia got beat pretty good by Penn State, and then Penn State didn't look great. And then with Iowa State winning at Iowa, I would say now they're a favorite. Kansas got beat by Illinois, did not look good. Those are two of the games that were coin flip-ish. So you are setting yourself up for a great season if you want it to be, and if things go your way. And Iowa's kind of the reversed. Everything was open for you. You win this game, you're favored in every game, except for the Ohio State game. You lose one other game, you're 10-2. You're probably in the playoff talk now. You lose to Ohio State. Just realistically, you probably lose one more just because that's how football works. At Iowa and Iowa State, you will lose one that maybe you don't think about. And now you got 3 losses, with 2 of them made not being against 2 of the best teams in the country. The Ohio State loss doesn't hurt as long as you keep it close. If you get beat 42-3, then you're out. And was Iowa I'm going to say Iowa fans putting too much playoff or bust on it? Or is that realistic because of all the defensive seniority that they have? And this is kind of, next year is going to be a rebuilding year on the defensive side of the football because of all the 5th, 6th-year seniors. And now COVID is done. I believe after this year, this is the last year of people, I think. Of course, then you have that tight end at Miami that's in his 9th year. I don't know what happened there, but overall, I think COVID is done. This is the last year of COVID. Extra years.
Yeah, for Iowa State, I think most importantly, their next 5 games look pretty winnable. But as you know, early in the season, you've got this bye week. You got to beat Arkansas State. I see they're 2-0. They're actually going to, I think, Michigan this week.
Yes.
So on the road at Michigan and on the road to Iowa State, you're hoping that all that travel and stuff, hope they'll be beat up a little bit.
I hope Michigan comes out and just thumps their butt, beats the crap out of them after Michigan getting thumped and their butts beat by Texas. That's really what you want, and you want them beat up.
But this is a game that Iowa State, you got to win this one, because to win at Kinnick, you won the first game of the season. We've talked about the early season struggles of Iowa State. Arkansas State on paper doesn't look like much. You have to win that game to get to 3-0, and then you start the Big 12 schedule, and you look at Houston, Baylor, at West Virginia, home versus UCF. Those are all very winnable games. So there's a lot on the table for Iowa State, but you got to beat Arkansas State to get to that 3-0 record.
And with this new, I don't know exactly when the first playoff polls come out, the ones that actually matter. The polls are out now, don't matter one bit. But you need to be in those polls. You need to be in that top 20. You need to be talked about. And if you're an Iowa State situation, these next 5 games you can't lose. And if you want to be talked about, and then you're going up, and then Get Up is going to talk about you. Game Day is going to start talking about you. Those are the things you have to do, because perception, unfortunately, is reality. ESPN wants as many SEC teams in this thing as they can. And they're all going to talk about SEC unless you give them something else to talk about. And the more Big 12 teams that keep winning, Utah, Kansas State, pulled it out. Oklahoma State, they pulled it out. But that's what you have to do. You have to just win and then let the chips fall at the end. They can. But just Iowa State, it didn't look good. They pulled it out, and that was is that a program defining win? Maybe, because over the course of Matt Campbell's tenure, he talks about winning in the margins, and overall he's not done it. They've missed kicks. They've turned the ball over, and especially in the Iowa game. They out Iowa in that game, which was is crazy to say, because that does not happen, especially at Kinnick Stadium.
Yeah, you're right. Iowa State wants to stay in the media, just kind of like we'll get to Nebraska here in a little bit. Nebraska's got a pretty good schedule coming up. We talked to before the season, so everything's there for Iowa State. As you mentioned, Utah, Michigan State, I think Arizona won again. They've got some NFL guys there.
Arizona and Arizona State both look good.
So the Big 12's they've got some momentum right now. They just got to keep it up. Now, obviously, not every team's going to be able to remain undefeated once they start playing each other. But, if you can get down to the end of the season, it'd be tough. I don't even know if it's possible, but if you have 2 undefeated Big 12 teams in the championship game, that would be something too. And then for Iowa, yeah, these next 2, you got to win them. You mentioned more than likely going to lose pretty bad at Ohio State. But if Iowa can run the table and finish 10-2, maybe they could be one of the last teams in. But as you
Right.
mentioned,
And you
you've
need
got some
Iowa
tough
State then to
games.
do well. If Iowa State's in the Big 12 title
Yeah.
game, then that's not a bad loss. If Iowa State finishes 7-5, then you're probably out.
Yeah, for Iowa, it's just take care of business versus Troy, and then at Minnesota, which we want to get that revenge win. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Iowa. Like I said, the offense, we'll know more once Big Ten play starts for them.
We'll say this: the beer tastes just a little bit better this week than it did after Saturday. It tasted better.
Well, I'm sure it was a big win for Iowa State. So you guys got the bragging rights. There's no doubt about it.
All right, now moving on, and I watched this game, or I watched some of it. I couldn't watch all of it because it was a boring game, and it really wasn't that good. But it's always a show. Nebraska, Colorado won. Those are when I was in college. You think about, I was in college from 1998 to 2003. I was on the 5-year plan. Colorado, Nebraska was number 1 for several of those years. Played a national championship game against Miami. A year that Colorado beat them like 62-20. That was kind of the start of where you had to be in a conference championship game, things like that. Those are 2 of the, Big 8 schools, and Matt Rule is turning that program around, and they've got that quarterback's good. Dylan Raiola's. He's number 1 guy in the country, so you expect him to be good, but he's good. Looks like Patrick Mahomes. Looks like Mahomes is playing Saturdays and Sundays now, or Thursdays. Last week, Thursday, and then he came back and played Saturday. The game was not close. Ended up, Nebraska only scored 28 points, but they could have put up whatever they wanted. I really believe that. They took it easy. The Nebraska running back just ran over Shiloh Sanders and broke his arm. Shadur Sanders walked off towards the end, hurt. I know on our notes here, can Shadur survive the season? I don't know, because their own line is god-awful again. And question for you, Trev, here, and I think the answer is pretty obvious. I think you can go get skill guys every year and be an okay football team. Like, you can try to go get a quarterback, and you can get a receiver and a running back and DBs and stuff. But I think linemen, with the exception of maybe being a D-line, I think a D lineman you can probably go get. But I think offensive linemen, you're going to have to build a little bit, because it takes some time. 1, working together, and 2, it just takes time in general to become a good offensive lineman in college. And if they're transferring, something probably happened not great for them. They're not playing enough. I'm not going to say this never happens where I just want to go somewhere else. And they're a stud. They're an All-American. I'd like to see how many truly All-American players transferred. There's some. But an All-American player transferring doesn't happen very much. Or an all-conference offensive lineman that transferred. Those stats you could look up. I didn't do it. I probably should have. But I think Colorado's going to have a hard time unless they start developing linemen. I think you're okay with going and getting skill guys, but I think you're going to have to develop linemen. And that's where teams like Iowa, Iowa State, Nebraska, teams like that are going to be better in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. The skill guys, you can kind of plug and play them a little bit. Even defensive linemen, as you mentioned, especially pass rushers, defensive tackles. Defense is a little bit easier, just effort, rush the pass, run stop. Offensive lines, they take time to gel. Now, if you need to bring in one guy, maybe a right guard or something, you got the 4 starters coming back. That's a little bit different. But if you're trying to revamp most of an entire offensive line year after year, you're going to struggle. And that's what's going on with Colorado right now. They're a mess on the offensive line. I don't know if Shedeur is going to survive the season. This thing is unraveling pretty quickly, at least on the field. Joe Klatt, former Colorado player, mentioned that for the university, that it's been great for money, applications, all this stuff. But as far as the play on the football field, this thing's unraveling quickly. And it could get really ugly for Colorado this season because all the fun is coming to an end now.
And you wonder if all the off-season stuff and the talk and the distractions was trying to be a distraction for a reason, because maybe he realized he wasn't going to be very good again. You think there's something to that? Because Deion is not dumb. He knows exactly what he's doing. Not everybody agrees with it, but Deion knows how to work a room. He's a car salesman. As you can see on TV, he sells everything. He's got DirecTV. He's got, his Aflac commercials with Nick Saban. He's got all kinds of commercials selling stuff because that's what he is. Was he trying to pull a fast one on everybody and get all the distractions over here, hoping you wouldn't notice that his football team's not very good? He's got a couple really good players. His son, one of them, and then Travis Hunter is just an absolute stud. But they're not good as a team.
No, they're not good as a team, and they've got a tough game this weekend. Colorado versus Colorado State up in Fort Collins. It's a must win for Colorado and Deion because they don't have a lot of wins on paper right now. So they need this one. That game was that was a back and forth game last year, if you remember. It was craziness, comebacks. Colorado State's going to be ready for that one. We'll see who comes up winning, but yeah, I mean, most likely Colorado's got a top 5 for sure pick in Travis Hunter, and we'll see what happens with Shedeur Sanders. The quarterback class for next year isn't looking quite as strong, but you've got Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Cam Ward at Miami. So some of those guys might rise and fall, but yeah, for Colorado, you and I understood what was going on last year. We just kind of laughed at it, but we got it. It was about getting attention on the program and the state, which I thought was good. And then
and
eventually you got to start winning games.
Yeah, he did exactly what he needed to do last year. And no one expected him to be great last year. And they won a few football games that probably, if you ask him deep down in his heart, he probably didn't think they were going to win. But when you're riding high, you got to ride it. And he knew, and then they went to that Oregon game and just got absolutely killed, and it unraveled from there. But he had the 3-4 week run and couldn't help himself after that, I guess. Maybe got that little taste and just can't get it out of him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see after this year, after Shedeur and Travis Hunter go to the NFL. What's Deion? Is he really going to stick it out here for 5 years and build a program, or is he going to leave?
I just don't see him staying. And I know you don't either.
It's going to be tough. I mean, Colorado's a tough place to get players. The state of Colorado, college football wise, we've talked about it many times on here. There's a fan base, of course, but it's nothing like the state of Iowa with Iowa and Iowa State. It's a night and day difference. Out here in Colorado, it's really the pro sports that dominate, and then college. Obviously, in Iowa, it's everything's college.
All right, and then really the upset of the week, upset of the year so far. Northern Illinois goes into South Bend, collects a check for $1.4 million, and then walks out with a win, which is just awesome. I mean, obviously, you don't, as an Iowa State fan or Iowa fan, we both had it happen to us. North Dakota State walked into both of our stadiums and won. UNI's walked into Ames more than once and won. Western Michigan beat Iowa years ago. Iowa State's lost to Connecticut. I mean, we've both been on the losing ends of these, and they're bad. But the big scheme of things is Notre Dame out now, no matter what they do, because their schedule's awful. Are they out?
They need USC to be undefeated when they play at the end of the season is what they need.
Yeah.
And they better win out and have it, beat USC and get in is, that's what they've got to hope for at this point. But they've got to get through their schedule first.
Yeah, you got to hope Texas A&M does really well, and you want USC to keep winning.
A&M, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want A&M to go 500. That doesn't help your cause either.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
was
because
a
Florida State
stunner.
doesn't
And
look
I
good.
was looking at the spread. I was looking at the spread before that, and I don't actually bet on the spreads anymore just because Vegas is too tough to beat. But I saw that and I was like, boy, if I did bet Northern Illinois, so I thought Notre Dame would win, but I kind of thought before that game that I could see them being a little bit sleepy in that one, coming out slow.
And if that's not quite a UNI in Iowa, but a lot of those NIU kids are probably Chicagoland kids, I'd say. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I'd guess there are a lot of Chicagoland kids that wanted to play at Northwestern, wanted to play at Notre Dame, wanted to play at Illinois, Iowa, and they're not quite good enough. They're an inch too short or 30 pounds too light. And so they dreamed of going to Notre Dame and playing, and then they went in there and beat them. I mean, that's just a dream I mean, it's no different than you and I. Those kids, most of those kids wanted to play at Iowa State. If you're an Iowa kid, you grow up wanting to play at one of those two places. And then you fall back to UNI. If they're only if you want a scholarship and you're walking on at Iowa State, or, you weren't the biggest recruit out of, Iowa State didn't recruit you. And so I guarantee a lot of those kids probably are Notre Dame fans, would be my guess.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee just everything that you said there. Notre Dame fans wanted to play there, probably grew up watching them, and now this is their opportunity to come in and play the upset, just like UNI sometimes, Western Michigan, some of these schools. Every year it happens. They get paid a lot of money to quote-unquote be an easy win, and they end up pulling off the upset. So, yeah, Notre Dame's in some trouble. They almost for assuredly have to win out.
And it's absolutely crazy. A week ago, Marcus Freeman is the man. Marcus Freeman is going to take him to the playoff. Marcus Freeman this. And now people want him out. I mean, it is absolutely insane. And I'm really, really glad that I believe both Iowa and Iowa State are neither one like that. We understand our place. We want our teams to be good to great, but we also understand it's not life or death. Our coaches we don't want our coaches on a hot seat after every win or loss, on or off. There comes a time, it was time for Hayden Fry to be done. There's been a couple times where it was time for Paul Rhodes to go, and that happens. It's just reality, but it's not a one game thing. It's not it was an entire season or 2 or 3 seasons, or you can kind of see projecting that it's not going well. And I'm glad that I'm a fan and I live in a state that we don't do that.
No, that's right. I mean, Iowa and Iowa State, I think for the most part, pretty realistic expectations of what we're going to do when we lose a game that, for Iowa, all those years losing to Northwestern. I mean, every time you played Northwestern, you thought we should beat them, but then when you don't, you're like, well, it happens a lot. We're not going to fire Kirk over one game. Notre Dame's, it's interesting. I mean, still a lot of season to go, but I think UNI and everybody was kind of chalking them into that 5 spot potentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, now they're going to probably need to win out and need some help to even get in. But I forget the media deal though. The TVs, they'll probably
it is a TV show.
In. Yeah, so there's that aspect of it too. But they're going to need to show something though.
Let's say they went out and say, Florida State just has a mediocre season, A&M just has a mediocre season, and USC just has a mediocre season. 11-1 Notre Dame, or a 10-2 Big 12 champ or Big 12 runner-up. That's what you're going to have. And
I'd probably go with the Big 12 runner-up, but I know the TV and the media people push for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Notre Dame is a big, big, big moneymaker for TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know how that game's going to get played. 12 spots. They can nudge Notre Dame into one of the 12 and get away with it without. They'll get heat, but they know they can get away because there's 12 spots. It's not like there's 4. There's 12 now, so they're going to have a little bit of wiggle room to nudge a Notre Dame in or another big school some years when maybe they shouldn't.
Absolutely. All right, week 1 in the NFL. I haven't heard too much, but I guarantee there's a lot of people that are in survivor games and pools and whatever, and they are gone. And it happens every year. And it just absolutely sucks. But how many people picked the Bengals over the Patriots and are gone in those games? I'd like to see a percentage.
It's got to be very high. That's every week 1 and week 2. You're in a survivor pool. Usually half the people are out the first week because there's always
they're trying to be cute. They're trying to use someone that they're not going to use a lot. Now, out in Circa, they do one, and it's a little bit different because it's weeks, and then like Christmas is a separate week or it's kind of a separate game, and Thanksgiving is a separate thing. So, and only certain teams play during that time. So you kind of had to save the Chiefs. You almost kind of want to, if you're just trying to make it through a month, you'd want to almost pick the Chiefs, pick the 49ers, and just survive in advance and try to make it as long as you can. Use the big teams, use per se the obvious ones, but in some of them there's little side things that you have to take into account. And the Chiefs play in all those kind of weird, the Thanksgiving Day. I think Thanksgiving Day and that Friday are like one little group in that Circa pool. And so you don't have a whole lot of teams to choose from. And so you are saving that. And the Bengals are not good. I don't know what else to say. And maybe the Patriots aren't as bad as we think. And I don't know, you kind of wrote on here, a lot of teams didn't look very good. There was a couple good games. Some of the best teams looked like the best teams, but those mediocre teams, the Bears escaped. Win is a win, not an offensive touchdown, but you win. 49ers scored on 8 straight possessions. Brock Purdy didn't have a touchdown. I mean, you think about scoring 8 straight times on that defense. The Jets defense is supposed to be elite, and you hope their offense is good enough. Maybe they're not.
Yeah, let's talk about that game specifically because we're not going to go through every single game, but I did want to cover that one because that was a big game, obviously. To score on 8 straight drives, I think they did it, and the Saints did it against the Panthers, but it's been like 3 or 4 or 5 years since any team has done that in the NFL. To go on 8 straight scoring drives, that's pretty insane in the NFL. The Jets defense looked awful. I expect they'll rebound. Now, as far as the offense goes for the Jets, Rodgers looks a little nimble. That really shouldn't be much of a surprise. I thought the offensive line did okay considering it was their first game with those 5 starting. I thought they did, an adequate job. Luckily, their schedule eases up. But, yeah, the Jets, I picked them as one of the last wild card teams. I don't know if I love it. I didn't know if I loved it when we made our predictions, but their next 4 games are very winnable. And then for the 49ers, no Christian McCaffrey, no problem. Trent Williams was in the building, I think, for like 5 days before the game. He played outstanding. I know he had to get a little IV there at the end. He definitely is out of shape, but even being out of shape, he held up just fine. And the Jets got to get Reddick signed. We talked about that before the season. I don't know what they were doing making that trade and then not getting a deal done right away. That's the Jets being the Jets. But I sent you a text, and we talked about this last year too. There's a few teams we know what they are. We know the Chiefs are really good and the 49ers are really good. And we're pretty sure that the Panthers and the Giants are not going to be very good. And over the next 4 to 5 weeks, we're going to find out a lot about these teams. and probably about 20 teams are going to be bunched together. And we're going to find out week to week how good they are. Every year there's a team that starts out, 6-3 and then falls apart, or a team that starts out 2-5 and then all of a sudden goes on a run. So it happens every year. We're going to find out who the contenders are. And when I say contenders, potential playoff spots, we're going to find out who the pretenders are. Week 1 could be a little bit of fool's gold sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, the NFL is, and you touched on it earlier, how good Vegas is at picking over-unders, spreads. It is dead on so many times. And and I know those guys are geniuses, and that's how they wouldn't build those huge buildings if they didn't know what they were doing. But the amount of money and research and resources that are used to get those lines and to set them and to be so good at them, it's absolutely nuts. And every week, every season, every sport, how good those guys are. And the NFL is about the best at it. Because it doesn't matter if it's the worst team and the best team. You get that, you always talk about that double-digit spread in the NFL. Almost blindly take the team that is the underdog. Because NFL games are not. They're just so close in general.
Yeah, they typically are. I mean, a lot of these games come down to a field goal most of the time. So, Vegas gets it right. And, the 49ers came out rolling. All the offseason drama that they had, Ayuk, Trent Williams, Ricky Purcell getting shot, all these different things going on, and they come out and roll in a weird way. Almost should have seen that coming. This game, I want to talk about the Packers and Eagles real quick. Obviously, with Jordan Love getting hurt, that's definitely a big deal. Sounds like it might not be as bad. But speaking of the Eagles, I know I told you I thought they were going to be a surprise team to miss the playoffs. They ended up getting the win. Saquon looked really good. That's bad news for Joe Shane there in New York with the Giants. And the Giants, I think, are going to be bad news all year anyway. But the Eagles, Hurts had 3 turnovers, and he could have easily had 4 or 5. So I'm still not. I'm going to hold strong on. I think the Eagles are. I just don't believe in their coach, and we'll see when adversity hits for the Eagles what happens. They lose a game they should win. They lose 2 in a row because every team goes through adversity in the NFL season. You think about the Chiefs and 49ers last year. 49ers on that Sunday or Monday night getting blown out by the Ravens and Brock Purdy playing terrible. They overcame that. The Chiefs with all their drops, and then that game at home versus the Raiders, where I think the Raiders didn't complete a pass in the second half, and the Raiders won the game. The Eagles are going to go through adversity at some point, and I'm just interested to see how the head coach and the team handles it. Because I'm still not sold on the Eagles, even though they did get the win, which Saquon looked good. Like I told you, I love their roster. Don't like their coach.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just with having those games overseas is just weird to me. It's weird to watch in those stadiums and how they interact. And I saw a thing that, these fields are usually rugby/soccer fields, and soccer players and how you play soccer is just so different than football that the fields are just not built to withstand 300-pound guys or 250-pound guys being in one spot and pushing off the ground. And I just noticed the fields suck. Now, I understand they still have to meet a certain standard, and the NFL makes sure of that. But they need to do, and I understand you can't just replace a whole field. I mean, they can. The NFL has unlimited money. But that's the biggest thing. These fields just don't hold up and aren't built to withstand NFL players on them. And I think it does a little bit of disservice to the football game, because you do see people sliding and things that don't happen on your fields back here. And there's no turf anywhere else. U.S. is about the only place that uses turf.
Yeah, the field but a lot of these down in Brazil or over in London, Germany, the fields definitely can be an issue, and I agree it affects the play on the field. The problem is the NFL is not going away from it. They're just going to keep adding these games because they are, as we talk about many times, the NFL owns the domestic market here in America. The only place to go now is globally, which they're doing. So these games are not going away. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah. So let's. I want to talk about the Bears real quick. Caleb Williams just looked okay. He really didn't make mistakes, but he didn't do anything outstanding. And the biggest play that comes to mind, I think they had 1st and 10, about probably the 15, 20-yard line. Call kind of a bootleg action play, and he's got guys in his face right away. It's not his fault. The line, something got messed up, or a good blitz, whatever, it doesn't matter. And he tries to escape and use his playmaking ability, which he is great outside the pocket on the run. That's his strengths. But he's booting out, going to his left. He's right-handed, and he keeps going back. And he ended up getting sacked because he's not able to get away like he's probably done his entire life. And he takes a 20-yard sack. And essentially the Bears now have to punt because 1st and 30 or 2nd and 30 is just, it's a drive killer. And those are the things that rookie quarterbacks, and then someone like him in particular that has always been a better athlete and able to scramble and outrun D linemen and outrun defensive players, and at least able to throw it away. Not necessarily you make a big play, but at least you're not losing 20 yards. And those are just things that the coaching staff, I'm sure, is just going to say, hey, take the 8-yard sack. We'll live to fight another down. We can't lose another 10, 11, 12 yards.
Yeah, you take that initial loss of yardage, whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 yards, because you get sacked for a 20-yard loss. Now all of a sudden you're out of field goal range. You got to stay within field goal range to get some points at least. So I think he'll learn from that. I feel like that's a pretty easier one to learn. He'll probably have a few more mistakes like that through the year where he tries to do a little too much scrambling, but eventually I think he'll cut down on that. I think he had a touchdown that was dropped. This is offensively, that was about as bad as a performance as they could have had. So I think it's only uphill from here, hopefully. And I expect Caleb to play better as the season goes on. The 93 passing yards, everyone's making fun of him because of that. Already call him a bust. Still a lot of time left in the season. So that was actually really impressive that the Bears got the win as poorly as they played on offense. The defense and special teams really stepped up for him. But yeah, Caleb will learn from that. Sometimes those broken plays, you just got to take a minimal mistake of loss of yardage rather than a maximum one like he did.
Right. All right. Any other NFL stuff for you?
No, I mean, just looking real quick, the Rams-Lions, that was a great game. I think the Lions got a little bit away from the running game. David Montgomery was doing really well, and then for some reason they got a little too pass happy, but Lions came out on top of that one. I think the Cowboys and Browns, Deshaun is broken. There's no doubt about it. But did the quarterback ranking. I told you, I wonder if Jameis Winston's actually the best quarterback on that roster. It just depends if they're going to play him or not. If they play Deshaun Watson 10 games this season, I don't know I'm not so certain that the Browns aren't a surprise top 10 draft pick this year, maybe even top 5. They've got really good players all over that roster, but Deshaun's broken, I think, as a human and as a quarterback.
Yeah,
I think they still own. There's a bunch of stuff coming out today about the outs and possible outs, but unless something happens, I think they still owe him $172 or $176 million. So it's.
I mean, the NFL people just have to be absolutely so mad at Cleveland because, I mean, you can sign him for a big deal like that, but with his background and his situations, it needed to be just so incentive laden, not guaranteed. They guaranteed it all. That's the crazy part. You have to start so many games. If anything else comes out like came out this week and keeps coming out, you're out. just things like that. And I guess they didn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, you think the Giants are in a bad spot, and they're not in a great one with with Daniel Jones, but
I saw a thing today.
That's peanuts compared to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I read a thing today. Worst quarterback. How to build your worst quarterback, and it was a picture of Daniel Jones, which makes sense. And then a lot of times they use Patrick Mahomes' arm to build your best quarterback. This was Daniel Jones' decision making, Daniel Jones movement. It was all Daniel Jones because he's awful. Because is that stat correct that he's thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns since he signed that deal?
Yes, that's correct.
I almost didn't believe it.
It's borderline unbelievable. Yeah, I mean the Giants are in a real bad spot too. I don't see the season going very well. I think Joe Shane is going to get fired, their GM. He had that weird interaction with John Mara when they had the Saquon Barkley thing going on, and Mara was like, "Boy, I won't be able to sleep at night if he goes to Philadelphia." Well, now Saquon goes to Philly, 3 touchdowns the first game. If he continues to play well and they go to the playoffs and the Giants go 5-12. Joe Shane's out for sure, and I think Brian Daboll's out as well.
Yeah, I mean, I understand they didn't want to just go offer Saquon the world, and they wanted him. I almost wonder if they just didn't think teams would offer it to him, and they thought they could get him to come back relatively cheap, realizing that he wasn't going to get it anywhere else. But the Eagles said, heck with it, we'll give it to him.
Yep. And the biggest mistake they made was not franchising Daniel Jones the year before and giving Saquon maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. Instead, They did the opposite, and they're regretting it right now.
Yeah, crazy.
And then looking forward, real quick, I didn't know if you want to talk about week 2 at all. I didn't really go game by game or anything. The one thing I did write down is undefeated teams. We have 6 games where both teams are 1-0. So we're for sure going to have at least 6 undefeated teams after week 2, possibly more because there's 1-0 versus 0-1.
Right.
And then that same number of winless games, we have 6 matchups of teams that are 0-1. So at least 6 board teams are going to get their first victory, and at minimum, 6 teams are going to be 0-2. And I forget what the percentage is, but if you start 0-2, it's pretty tough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the 0-2 is a big stat, and I've heard that for years. It can be done, but it's really hard to overcome.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is, and so that you can kind of go through the schedule this Thursday on Amazon. Really good matchup, Bills at Dolphins. I'm interested to see how that goes. The Bills look really rusty. The first half versus Arizona, and then Josh Allen went into Superman mode. 2 more rushing touchdowns. We talked about his trajectory there with rushing touchdowns. So that's a good one. Bears at Texans.
Is that still Al Michaels calling that on Amazon? Him and Herb Street?
I know it's Herb Street. Yeah, it should be. So that's a pretty good matchup. And then, the Sunday night game, Bears at Texans. Obviously, Texans came out on fire, got a good road divisional win. I would expect the Bears offense to look a little bit better. And then Monday night, the Falcons at Eagles. Kirk Cousins didn't look very good. He didn't move around at all. I think they ran every single play from shotgun or the pistol against the Steelers. And we know Kirk Cousins at prime time. So if they go to 0-2 and maybe start out 0-3 or 0-4, it could be Michael Penix time there in Atlanta.
Right. And then kind of last here, Jordan Love hurt on one of the last plays of the game. And you got a list of guys that they might bring in. I think I heard it's not as bad as they thought in 4 to 6 weeks. Is that what you heard as well?
Yeah, but they're talking maybe less than 4 now, maybe 2 to 3. So that might be a reason why they haven't brought in Tannehill or traded for someone. And because a lot of Titans fans came into the Green Bay Forum, the football forum that I'm on, and they were asking kind of the Packers fans what the plan was. And Packer fans were saying, well, we're going to go for Malik Willis. And all the Titans fans were like, well, you don't want to do that because he's not very good. So if it's just for a week or two, maybe you can survive. We'll see how he looks against the Colts this weekend. But It sounds like the Jordan Love injury might not be as bad. He might not miss as much time. The real question is when he comes back, how good is he? How can he move around? Is he going to trust his leg? That'll be interesting to see for the Packers.
All right, and then the Fever. They did lose a game, so they've lost 2 games now since the break. But then they came back and won in overtime on the weekend. They're playing tonight. I actually haven't even looked. Did they win or lose tonight, Trev?
They lost they're 2-2 since
Okay.
we talked last.
Okay.
But Aaliyah Boston had 3 of her best games. I know we talked about. I wanted to see her get some more action, so she had some really good games lately. Tonight, Caitlin, I think, was 1 for 10 from 3. She just couldn't shoot very well. The team didn't shoot very well from the free throw line. Kelsey Mitchell did really well. But again, Vegas is back-to-back champs. So, you got to look at it. The first 12 games, if we would have told all the fans that they'd be sitting here at, I think, 19 and 18 now, everybody would have signed up for it. So they got 3 games left. Would like them to at least win 1 more to ensure that they at least go 20 and 20, 500 on the season. They've got Vegas Friday. Then they've got Dallas a couple days later. And I think they end the season at Washington, I believe it is. So 3 games left.
Yeah, Clark she was 6 for 22, 1 for 10 from 3. So she did not have a good night. 6 points for Boston, 16 for Clark, and then 24 for Mitchell. So not only 2 players in double figures. That's not going to get it done. And Las Vegas is good. It's no, losing to Vegas is not going to kill you.
Yeah, and that's the only team they haven't beat this year. So they have them again on Friday. That's their last chance to do it. But, still really, they've played really well since the Olympic break. This is Caitlin's really her first bad performance since then. Otherwise, her shooting has been a lot better since the break. The team's really been on fire. But 3 games left. Would like them to at least win 1. Be nice if they could win at least 2 of the next 3 and maybe finish with a 21 and 19 record going into the playoffs.
Yeah. All right, finishing up here. I do want to talk. We did lose James Earl Jones the other day at 93. So, great long life. Nothing to be, shocked about or sad about when he lived to 93. It always hurts and it stinks, but you got to look at the time well spent and look at the great life that he lived. Some of the greatest performances of, childhood memories in big time movies that just right at my age. So I'll tell you mine after you, but when you think of James Earl Jones, what role do you think of first, Trev? And I know we did not prepare for this, but this is just kind of off the cuff right to you, Trev.
That's my favorite movie of all time is The Sandlot. So I always think of him in that one. Obviously, Field of Dreams. There's the Darth Vader stuff. There's a bunch of different roles. I'm going through his IMDb, his movie list here. I mean, there's a bunch. There's a lot you forget about, but the first one that always comes to mind is The Sandlot for me.
Yeah, and that would actually out of what I call the big. There's really 4 movies that he was in that. Or 4 series of movies. Number 1 is Darth Vader. I was kind of a dork. I love Star Wars. He is Darth Vader. Now, he wasn't the actor in it. He wasn't the face or anything, but he was the voice. He was Darth Vader. And I love Star Wars. All the movies are great. They got worse as they went on, but the ones that he was Darth Vader in the late 70s, early 80s, those were the great ones. Number 2, Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams is one of my favorite movies. I'm much more of a Field of Dreams guy than The Sandlot. I like The Sandlot, very good. Field of Dreams just hits me right where it itches. I just love it. I'm going to play, his baseball speech here just in a second here. And then, one that kind of gets overrated and maybe undervalued, but this was again, right, is he was Mufasa in The Lion King. Lion King was one of the biggest movies in the early 90s. Disney was starting to make those big, every couple of years, one of the big movies, Little Mermaid, Lion King, just had a whole string of them there. And he sounds like a king. He was the king in Coming to America. That was another great movie. It's a really funny movie. Could not make that movie today, but really funny. And he was a king in that. He was in Conan the Barbarian, those movies. I mean, just a lot of movies. And Arnold Schwarzenegger came out and had great things to say about him, helping Arnold, transition to America and become an actor, and just the things he did for him. And people, he struggled with a stutter, much like, Bill Walton. And for some reason, when he memorized lines or did poetry or things like that the stutter went away and he was able to do it. But in your everyday talk with him, I guess he really, really struggled in that, and always kind of struggled. And I've seen some kids with that as a teacher. I've never really seen a debilitating one, but I guess he had one, and Bill Walton had one as well. It's amazing the different things that happen, and poetry, or when he memorized lines or whatever, he was able to get over that and have the career and just that voice. He has the voice. Morgan Freeman has a voice. Certain people just have the voice that it instantly. And I do, kind of ending here. We're right at an hour. Try to keep it a little bit shorter this week. I am going to end with the Field of Dreams speech. One of the best thing. I love going to that place. It actually just came out. It's sold back to a Dyersville company. I think the city of Dyersville just formed a corporation and bought it back from whoever had it. So it's going to stay under local control, which is better. And, just goes to show, we've talked about this, losing people. He's 93 years old, so lived a great life. But, people that were adults and maybe starting to become a little bit older when we were kids, Trevor, we're losing every day. And that's just the reality of our age, and things happen, and just enjoy your time, enjoy the people that you love, and everything else like that, because you never know.
Yeah, well said. 93 years old, lived a great life. One of the most recognizable voices of all time, and definitely a lot of big time movies and roles.
All right, so I'm going to play this, and I hope this stuff comes off pretty good. Trying some new things here, and able to do that using another screen over here, trying to produce and do this. It's kind of different, but play this for a little bit here, and then we'll finish up, and we'll go from there.
People will come, Ray. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
And they'll walk out to the bleachers. And sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game. And it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
Ray, when the bank opens in the morning, they'll foreclose.
People will come, Ray.
You're broke, Ray. You sell now or you lose everything.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, People will come, Ray. People will most definitely come. Ray.
All right. And I know that was long, 2 minutes, but I could listen to that over and over. And I don't know if people watch the debate or ever, but just that speech, how things will get better. Looking back, things do get better and people move on. And we both talk about it. I'm more of a baseball guy than you, but it's hard to watch sometimes on TV and everything, but just baseball, sitting and watching baseball, there's nothing like it, in my opinion. And I know I'm kind of off on my own on that, but a little popcorn, a little beer, a little hot dog at a ball game doesn't get much better than that.
No, live at a baseball game is always a good time. Great speech there in that movie. Might have to watch that here maybe tonight. I got nothing to do, so yeah, definitely. Glad you're getting the videos on here. That's pretty cool. Hopefully that works all right. That's going to be a good addition to the podcast. And yeah, like you said, we've gone pretty long, like last 3 or 4 of them. And I think right at an hour is kind of what we try to do during the season, give or take.
Nope, very good. Obviously Iowa State's on a bye week, so nothing really this week. Iowa is against Troy, 0-2 Troy. But Ottumwa alum Trey Swartz will be playing for Troy back. And like we talked about, his dream was to play in Kinnick Stadium every week to go play for the Hawks, but he's able to live that dream at least once. He's going to run out of the tunnel, now the visiting tunnel, but he's still getting to suit up and play football at Kinnick Stadium, which 99% of people don't get to do, and that's great. And I hope he does really well, and has a great experience.
Yeah, I'll be looking for him. That is a dream come true. Good for him. Hopefully he enjoys it and plays well. And like I said, I'll keep an eye out for him.
All right, thanks, Trev, and we'll talk next week. Again, please rate, review, subscribe with your favorite podcast player, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.